So Portuguese, like many other languages, is derived from Latin-based roots. So for those who are speaking English, there's going to be a lot of familiar words that you hear. Especially for those who speak Spanish, you're going to hear a lot of words that are very familiar. You can't structure a Portuguese sentence exactly like you do American. You can in some ways where, like, you say I am when you have a subject and a verb, like I am, I eat, I do this. That's okay. But as far as other things, like, it's not structured similarly. Like a Portuguese sentence, you never end with a preposition. You'll never end with, like, for example, if you're going on a date with a girl, I would never ask in Portuguese, who are you going with? I would never end with the word com, or with in Portuguese. It'd always be, I would start, with whom are you going to date? So just stuff like that. Portuguese language is so beautiful, man. It is very similar to Spanish. A lot of Spanish speakers says it's like speaking with a bunch of rocks in your mouth, right? I disagree. But the Portugal accent is really cool. Because, like I told you, there are so many different parts that speak Portuguese. The Portuguese accent in Portugal is very different from the one in Brazil. It's very similar to American English and English, like England English. So English is much more formal. You hear the tall ah like that. Or in America, we have our like here in Utah, mountain. We just have different ways of saying things, and we have our own slang. It's the exact same thing in Portugal and Brazil. Portugal is much more formal. The way you pronounce things, the grammar structure is way more followed and used than it is in Brazil. And in Portugal, the way they speak is much more shut in their mouths. It's much more shut, whereas in Brazil, it's a lot more animated. It's a lot more, your mouth's a little bit more open, but they have cool slang in Brazil, and it's beautiful. So because there's all these different parts that speak Portuguese, it's just different accents and different words and slang that they use. So that's kind of cool. If you can at all, I would learn as much as you can before you get into the MTC. Personally, the thing that I feel most missionaries struggle with being a teacher is knowing how to conjugate verbs. And I feel like if you can get there or leave the MTC being comfortable with conjugating verbs, you'll do really well. Of course, I'd encourage you to go do more than that. But as far as advice, knock out your conjugations. And just the key to learning the language, in any language but Portuguese, is speaking. You got to speak the language. So when you're in the MTC and not pre-MTC, do your best to learn sentences and just say them. Because it's as you say them that it begins to stick. And you'll be able to start thinking in Portuguese.